Yo, what is up YouTube? Welcome to this video, and in today's video, I am going to be talking about the first portion of my life, which is basically when I was a little kid kind of growing up. So, in regards to that, we'll go ahead, jump in, and get started. I think the biggest thing that I could start with is basically when I was born, pretty much. My mom was 24 years old at the time. My dad was, I believe, 26, 25, somewhere around there. And they were just getting started in careers, all that good stuff. So we were just kind of chilling. We had a decently nice house in a good neighborhood, all that good stuff when I was born. And then I started to grow up a little at a time. Now, growing up as a little kid was awesome. I was an only child for about 5 years because I was the firstborn. And my whole childhood was basically baseball. My dad, every single day after work, would come to the backyard and we would throw the baseball, we would hit the baseball, we would do everything in between that had to do with baseball. We would practice it all the time, and that is eventually why I pursued or tried to pursue a career in that regard. But it was very fun, good family, and yeah, when I was little, that's how it was. And then progress to when I was about 5 years old, we actually ended up moving to Little Rock, Arkansas. And Little Rock was a big city. We were actually in Bryant, for those of you who know where that is. But very interesting, very cool. We had a small house in a little small neighborhood and everything was good. And then I had a little brother that was born. So that was very interesting because I was no longer the only child. So a lot of the attention, shifted back and forth, all that good stuff. But baseball was still a main focus, and I continued to pursue that throughout my entire childhood, pretty much. But we had a good life. My dad, actually, before we moved to Little Rock, he actually worked at a place called Nucor, and it was basically just a big factory, and that's how he kind of provided and all that good stuff. And it was a pretty dangerous job if you know what Nucor is. But when we moved to Little Rock, he had basically accepted a job. I have no idea what it is. I don't remember because I was 5 years old. He had accepted a job that was pretty good. We had a little house. Everything was fine. And then we stayed there for about, I think, 2 or 3 years and then moved back to our hometown. And that is where everything started to change a little bit at a time. So my dad got a job at a construction company because he actually got his degree in engineering. So he was very, very smart, very intelligent man. And he ended up working for this construction company. And that is when everything started getting decently good for us. We were 100% middle class. I didn't grow up, in rags. I didn't grow up in any type of environment that was super harsh. We were just chilling, right? We were a good middle class family. And that was about it. But anyways, he was working at this construction place and everything was going good until about 2008 when the big recession hit. And then we took a massive hit in that regard. We actually had to move out of the really nice house that we had been in at that moment. And we kind of shifted to little bitty tiny apartment complexes and all that good stuff. And then eventually, after all that passed, we got to build our own home, and that was really, really nice. So we got that house, and then I was about 13 years old when everything started to shift drastically in my life because everything was good. I had great grades. I was playing baseball. I was doing really good at it. I had another brother at this time, so 2 younger siblings. And then when I was 13 years old, we were sitting in the house and my parents basically said, hey, will you guys come sit on the couch? So that is exactly what we did. And in that moment, life changed because I was really based in my faith. I was a believer in Jesus, all that good stuff, still am. But in that time, my faith was very strong. And so I was really focused in on that. And when that happened, that pretty much shifted my belief about my parents because I thought everything was pretty much good. I'd obviously heard fights and stuff like that, but I thought everything was good, and it turns out it wasn't. So there was a big shift in the family dynamic there because everything was split in half, right? So in that regard, that was the hardest thing in my life at that point that I had gone through because I didn't understand why everything was happening. I understood what was happening, but not why everything was happening in that moment. So continue to kind of just keep my head down, keep myself in faith, all that good stuff, and just hope that, one day, hopefully they would get back together. And eventually what had happened was there was a pretty much setup that we did where we would go to pretty much each house for 1 week. So I'd be at my mom's for 1 week and then my dad's house for 1 week. My mom went back to work at this time as a pharmacy tech. That's what she pretty much did for years, which if you don't know what that is, they do everything that the pharmacist is supposed to do but doesn't do, right? And they get paid way less than a pharmacist. So they get paid like $13, $14 an hour. I think a little more now, but she didn't get paid that much. Just made decent money, all that good stuff. But she was by herself and she was struggling quite a bit in that regard because it was just her and it was 3 boys, right? So I ended up getting a job on the farm, baling hay to do anything that I could to pay for myself, pay for little brothers if I had to, all that good stuff, and just make sure and help as much as possible. Now my dad, he had his house and he had gotten into sales at this point, and he actually sold insurance. So he had a decently nice house. I guess it was like a cabin thing. It was really, really cool. But that was kind of the family dichotomy there, was just 1 week here, 1 week there. And that took a while to actually get used to. It was very, very difficult. But I started getting used to it a little at a time, of course, with the hopes that they would get back together and everything would be all good with our family. And so I got into routine. I was doing push-ups, sit-ups, all that good stuff every single morning, reading my Bible, waking up every single morning, doing the same thing over and over again. And then one day I was at my mom's house and I woke up. I woke up to go to church and I did my push-ups, I did my sit-ups, I did all that good stuff. Read my Bible and pretty much got ready for church. And at that moment, that is when my life changed forever. Because in this moment, moving forward, that was the #1 thing that changed my life, shaped me the way that I am today. It was the biggest adversity that I have ever faced in my entire life, and hopefully will have to ever face in my entire life. But stay tuned for the next video, because the next video I'll be diving more into that. I was about 15 years old at this time, and I will dive directly into that story of how my perspective of everything happened, kind of go from there. And then yeah, stay tuned for it. But hopefully this got to help you understand me a little bit better as a little kid. I do not have a rags to riches story. I'm not gonna act like I do, ever. It was just a middle-class family, grew up in a pretty good family, everything was good, and then everything changed entirely. Stay tuned for the next video, because that is where I'll be talking about what drastically changed in my life and how I got through it. I made a bunch of mistakes trying to go through it, but hopefully I can illustrate it good enough to the point to where if anybody is going through it at this time, they know what to do, they know where to look, and hopefully they can get through those moments. So stay tuned for the next video. Hope this was super helpful. And this is just to get to know me a little bit better before I start spitting out a whole bunch of knowledge. So yeah.